Welcome to Positive Read-Ins. Russell Banks, New Hampshire writer, man of the people, writes and focuses on the everyday challenges that face the American public. This novel was published in 1991. This would be the height of the wealth of America, at least in my generation. And here we get a story of heartache and complication and the challenges that face every family. It's broken family after broken family in this novel. So the novel begins with a bus crash. The bus that goes off the road has a bunch of kids on it on the way to school, and a bunch of the children die in the town. And then we look at how that shapes the people, the families who lost their loved ones, or the children who were left with disfigurements because of that. The novel is narrated in a style similar to As I Lay Dying, which each chapter of As I Lay Dying is a different first-person monologue. In this novel, however, we don't have a bunch of first-person monologues. We only have 5. There's 4 different narrators, so it begins with the bus driver, Dolores, and it ends with the bus driver. In between there, we get Billy Ansell, who's this younger guy who a Vietnam War vet who lost his wife first to cancer and then later loses his 2 children. We get Mitchell Stevens, who's the lawyer from outside the town who comes in to try to make money off of this tragedy. I think that Russell Banks probably had Faulkner's Gavin Stevens, who is in a number of Faulkner's novels, also a lawyer, probably had him in mind. After that, we get Nicole Burnell, who is a child, a student who is now in a wheelchair after this. And through her monologue, we find out that her father, who's this kind of righteous Christian, was actually molesting her. So again, full of complications, full of tragedy. For me, the 2 highlights in the novel would be the Billy Ansell and Mitchell Stevens monologues. Billy Ansell, at first, I thought, he's too much of a too much of a kind of local yokel. He's having an affair with his friend's wife. He just seems, at first, not a very intelligent guy. However, as the narrative develops, we see that he does have he is introspective, and he has an interesting look on things, and as he has a very real life, and he remembers these past experiences that he had with his wife, again, who died, and their children, and that all comes to life very realistically in this novel. There's one scene in here that I found myself still going back to and remembering, and similar to the Faulkner novel, As I Lay Dying, we can see this scene both from Billy's perspective and then later from Mitchell Stevens' perspective. So this scene really is just after Billy has realized that his children have died. He goes in, he sits down, he's getting drunk. That's kind of how he's dealing with his problems here. And he has this moment of seeing himself reflected in the glass doors of his house. And that part I'm going to read now. Nights now, I can sit in my living room alone, looking at the glass of the picture window, with the reflection of my body and the drink in my hand and the chair and lamp beside me glaring flat and white back at me. And I am in no way as real in that room as I am in my memories of my wife and children. Sometimes it's not as if they have died so much that I myself have died and have become a ghost. You might think that remembering those moments is a way of keeping my family alive, but it's not. It's a way of keeping myself alive. Just as you might think my drinking is a way to numb the pain. It's not. It's a way to feel the pain. So again, I found this passage to be quite powerful and insightful, and right up there with all of Darrell and Peabody's from As I Lay Dying, their reflections on their metaphysical reflections on the meaning of life and memory and time. So we have Billy here seeing himself reflected and seeing that he's not as real. What's the line here? With my reflection of the body and the drink in my hand, I am in no way as real in that room as I am in my memories of my wife and children. So he's sitting there feeling the pain through drink, as he says, not numbing it, but really experiencing the pain and keeping he is himself alive by remembering his family, because that's where he feels like he was most alive, not as he is anymore, not as he is as he sees himself in the reflection. So that's quite an interesting perspective here about memory, quite a strong scene, and we get this scene again in the next narrative, the next monologue. We get Mitchell Stevens, the lawyer, looking as he comes to see Billy to try to talk to him into to starting a case against the town. We see him looking in at Billy having this moment. Mitchell Stevens is going to have his own introspective and kind of thought-provoking reflections on life. He is obviously the more educated of these narrators. He comes across at first as being, maybe opportunistic, so unlikable for that. But again, just like we got with Billy Ansell, as the narrative progresses, we see this very real character, and we get a very rich background with his life and what happened with his children, which is another part of the tragedy here, even though it doesn't take place in this narrative, but it's kind of what's happening off screen. But before we get there, related to that, because one of the themes I think in this novel is children and the fact that what happens when you lose your loved ones. So again, Billy Ansell talking on this says, people who have lost their children, and I'm talking here about the people of Sam Dent, that's the name of the town where they're living, and I'm including myself, twist themselves into all kinds of weird shapes in order to deny what has happened. Not just because of the pain of losing a person they have loved. We lose parents and mates and friends, and no matter how painful, it's not the same. But because what has happened is so wickedly unnatural, so profoundly against the necessary order of things, that we cannot accept it. It's almost beyond belief or comprehension that the children should die before the adults. It flies in the face of biology. It contradicts history. It denies cause and effect. It violates basic physics even. It's the final contrary. A town that loses its children loses its meaning. And that line there is one that, again, stayed with me after reading this. A town that loses its children loses its meaning. And I would say that's really what defines a lot of these characters, but especially Billy and Mitchell Stevens, that they're trying to find meaning. They are incredibly flawed characters, but likable as they're trying to go along and make sense of their life. Mitchell Stevens is a funny character. He, as I said, he's from the city, so he's in this small town, a little arrogant, a little bit looking down upon the local town folks, but at the same time, it's clear as it develops that he's not just looking to make money, but he actually has a connection there, and he's not saving these children, but he's trying to undo the wrong that has happened in some way, even by bringing financial reward to the parents. He's doing that to make up for the fact that he's lost his daughter. She hasn't died, but she's become a junkie, which we see throughout this book, and or throughout his narrative, and it's pretty hard in some places to read this, especially as a parent. But one of the scenes that we get, which connects this or helps explain his motivation, he remembers a time 2 decades before when his daughter was an infant, and she got bit, unlikely by some kind of poisonous spider, and has a reaction to it. And they're on their way to this hospital, but the doctor has told him that if she swells up too much, the poison gets around, you're going to have to cut a hole in her throat so she can breathe. And so his wife is driving there, and he's got the child with this knife near her throat, which is a pretty odd setup. And this is what he says about that. I can't tell you why I connect that terrifying drive to Elizabeth City over 2 decades ago to this case in Sam Dent now. So Elizabeth City's where they're going to the hospital, okay, to help his daughter, where children actually died, 14 of them. But there is a powerful equivalence. With my knife in my hand and my child lying on my lap, smiling up at me, trusting me utterly, with her face swelling like a painted balloon, progressively distorting her features into grotesque versions of themselves. I felt the same clear-headed power that I felt during those first days in Sam Dent, when the suit was taken off. I felt no ambivalence, did no second-guessing, had no mistrusted motives. I knew what I did and what I would do next and why. And Lord, it felt wonderful. It always feels that way, which is why I go on doing it. So we see here that Mitchell is constantly going out and trying to solve these cases, really to make up for the fact that he wasn't able to save his daughter. Even here, he's remembering this. Again, this scenario seems a bit unlikely, maybe even a little ridiculous. Maybe he is exaggerating it a bit, but he's remembering this heroic moment that he had with his daughter, even though he hasn't been able to save her when she becomes an adult, which again, as I said, makes for some pretty difficult reading as we go through his narrative. The one weakness I would say in this novel, or shortcoming, is probably Nicole's narrative. Nicole Burnell, that's the student. While that one is a bit shocking when we find out about the father, which again adds this layer, this complex layer, but also shows us that all these characters are broken in some way. She seems a bit too smart for her age, a bit too knowing in what she's doing. She's the one that deliberately ends that she lies, and this basically makes this suit against the town not being able to. It's not able to go through because of her lie, which Billy sees as saving the town, and maybe some other characters also see this as saving the town, so they don't all rip each other apart with these lawsuits. Like all great fiction, this novel has real-life characters that feel like they're real people with complexities, and none of them are wholly good or wholly bad. We can find interests in things about them. We can find ourselves in them. By homely gift and hindered words, the human heart is told of nothing. Nothing is the force that renovates the world. That's Emily Dickinson, and that's how Russell Banks begins his novel. It's a nihilistic opening for a dark and complex novel. Thank you for watching Positive Readings. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it and subscribe.